This week in news surrounding Israel, I'm talking about the demonic cry for a two-state solution. So stay tuned, friends, for all the details. Well, shalom, everyone. Welcome once again to this week's newscast. I'm Robert Gottslig, your host. And recently, the Global Times, an English-language Chinese newspaper, reported on China's call for a two-state solution. This is what the Global Times reported. They said that China calls on all parties to accelerate the two-state solution and support the establishment of an independent Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders, said Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Tuesday. He also said, behind the Gaza conflict is the delay in resolving the question of Palestine. He further went on to say that Gaza is a Palestinian homeland and a part of Palestinian territory and should not be a victim of international politics, adding that the parties concerned should continue to implement the ceasefire agreement and constructively advance follow-up negotiations. Now listen to what he says here. He says the principle of the Palestinians governing Palestine should be upheld in the post-war governance of Gaza in line with the two-state solution, with an ultimate goal to achieve peaceful coexistence between Palestine and Israel, as well as long-term peace and stability in the Middle East. Behind the Gaza conflict is the delay in resolving the question of Palestine? Is he serious? Here's a resolve to the question of Palestine. There never was a long-lost land called Palestine that had its own unique culture and people and language and government, period. No, that lie was perpetrated by Yasser Arafat. We did a whole newscast on the question of Palestine. If you'd like to watch that episode, simply click on the link provided in the description below. But friends, China isn't the only ones pushing Israel to a two-state solution. No, Trudeau, Macron, the former Biden administration, and many other world leaders also believe the same thing. That somehow, if only Israel would go back to pre-67 borders, that then there will be peace, and October 7th probably would have never have happened. Yeah, right. Well, friends, the so-called Palestinians had 67 borders. They had those pre-67 borders from 1948 to 1967, and yet they still formed the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, as I mentioned, Yasser Arafat became chairman of. I mean, what were they going to liberate back then? They already had what the world is pushing Israel to go back to. As I've said many times on this newscast, it's not about borders for the Palestinians. They're not interested in borders. It's about Israel's existence. That's why the mantra is the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The Palestinians want it all. They don't want a two-state solution. No, they don't. And so woe unto the world that pushes Israel to do that. And the world who refuses to acknowledge those facts and instead are forcing Israel to make peace with people who wish them dead, shame on them. I mean, look, Gaza should be all the proof that anyone would ever need that you cannot make peace with these people. Israel turned the entire strip over to them in 2005. Lock, stock, and barrel. Here you go. And look what came of it. The largest terrorist network of tunnels in the entire world, all with the intent to try to destroy Israel. Thanks a lot. Israel must be saying thanks. You know, we wanted to make peace, and this is what we got. Not only that, friends, but take a look at the demonic display of evil the world witnessed as the dead bodies of the Bebas children were transferred to the Red Cross in a disgusting gathering in Gaza with cheers from the Gazan civilians along with their children. Friends, have a look at the shameful wickedness of this group of bloodthirsty savages. Have a look. These two children, 9 months old and 4 years old, were choked to death by Hamas. They were brutally murdered, along with their mother, Shiri, who, by the way, wasn't even in the coffin when Hamas was handing the 4 bodies over to the Red Cross to go into Israel. She was supposed to be one of them with her 2 children. And when Israel found out and did forensic evidence, it wasn't even her. It was a Gazan woman. And later, Shiri was then delivered, but not at the beginning. It's just because Hamas is trying to play further with the minds of the Jewish people to bring further grief and torment to them. Friends, it's crazy. The cruelty and pure evil of a sick, demonic-minded death cult. That's what Israel has to deal with. We ought to have incredible amounts of compassion and support and prayers for Israel. And friends, in a post on X in Canada, I'm not sure if this was true, but on a post in X and on Instagram, there was a post of a Palestinian gathering in Toronto as they celebrated the murder of the Bibas children. Friends, where are our world leaders to condemn this? What is wrong with the world? You know, I named this episode The Demonic Cry for a Two-State Solution because it is satanic in origin. If Satan can somehow rid the world of Israel, if he can somehow destroy the Jewish people, then God is a liar and Satan can't be judged. That's why it's demonic to cry for a two-state solution. Instead, we should be standing with Israel. We should be standing against the disgusting evil that we're seeing. And again, stand with Israel, the only democratic country in the Middle East that upholds and protects the same freedoms and values that we so enjoy here in the West. Wake up, world. Wake up, Canada. You're better than that. And if you think it's just Hamas that's the problem, it is not. The majority of the Palestinians in Gaza and in the so-called West Bank all support what Hamas did. They're all guilty. And they teach that to their children, to hate and despise Israel. And friends, until that ends, there will never be any kind of peace in the Middle East. Just look at what happened last Thursday, which could have been a huge terror attack in the Tel Aviv area with numerous buses all exploding at the same time early on Friday morning, last Friday, during the busy day. Could you imagine if that would have happened? And thank God it was foiled, as 3 of the buses exploded with no one on them because the Palestinian terrorists programmed the devices to go off in the PM in the evening instead of in the AM in the morning. Could you imagine what would have happened in that busy time in the morning? It would have been an unprecedented amount of injuries and deaths. Again, wow, and praise to the God of Israel for his protection. It's just another example, though, that you will never make peace with people who will not recognize your right to exist and who wish you dead. Period. It's shameful to push Israel to try to make peace with those people. But what does God have to say about all of this? Well, first off, the land is his. That's the most important thing for us all to remember. The land is God's. He created this world. It's his ultimately, and therefore it's not for sale. And that's what we read in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23. The land shall not be sold permanently, God says, for the land is mine. And seeing as then how God owns the land ultimately, he can give it to whomever he pleases. And he has to the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, period. Secondly, he's going to judge the world for dividing his land. Joel chapter 3, verse 2. Let me read that for you. God says, I will gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's yet future. And I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. Lastly, I believe the solution, friends, to the problem is found in Asaph's prayer in Psalm 83. Now, I'm not saying that this is the Psalm 83 war, no, but I am saying that outside of Israel's Messiah, Jesus returning, that's ultimately what's going to bring peace. But Asaph's prayer is the only way that we're going to see some kind of peace in the Middle East until Messiah returns. Let me read to you what Asaph wrote. Let me read to you in God's word. Again, it's a psalm of Asaph. He says, "Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, 'Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.'" Doesn't that sound the days in which we live? "For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you." And then look here at verse 12. It says, "Who said, 'Let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession.'" Friends, listen to what Asaph's prayer is as he continues. He says, "Oh my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods, and as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame," and here's why, "that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the most high over all the earth." Wow. Friends, when we take tour groups to Israel, the Bible comes to life, not the Quran. Jerusalem isn't even mentioned once in the Quran. It's mentioned over 850 times in the Bible. When we take tours there and people come to the Holy Land, the Bible comes to life. And so let's stand against these demonic cries for a two-state solution. Let's speak up against it. Let's stand with Israel and the Jewish people, and let's comfort them during these trying times that they're living under. And with that, friends, and until next time, thanks for joining us on another episode of In News Surrounding Israel. Have a great night, everybody. God bless.